This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Yunxiao naturally recognized the move, and his expression changed drastically. He hurriedly performed an incantation gesture with one hand and circulated his energy to the extreme, turning the entire sky into a sea of thunder and making rumbling sounds. His real body appeared in the sea of thunder. His left hand formed a seal and his right hand held the thunder ball. A demonic shadow appeared behind him and stood up in the air, exuding a profound intent as he looked forward. What is this? Everyone was stunned for a moment. Baiming Lifeng's heart was filled with shock as he exclaimed, "Giant spirit god art." Baiming Zai's eyes turned cold as he said, "Boy, you're indeed a rare genius, but it's a pity that you shouldn't be so arrogant." A strange silver symbol appeared on the seal in his hand. The moment it appeared, the world changed. A gust of wind swept away the clouds and a dark mass surged over. 3 moves from beyond the heavens, I have a limit. Baiming Zai's expression turned solemn and respectful at this moment. A hand seal enlarged in front of him, and a vortex of nebula appeared in his palm, shining with the sky and slowly pressing down. His face also turned pale, as if it was extremely difficult for him to use this divine ability. When the Ren family head of Baiming Dark Palace who obtained the Outworld Dark Stone studied the divine power in the Dark Stone, he sighed and said, "My life has a limit, but the Tao has no limit." Therefore, the first of the 3 moves from beyond the heavens was named, "My life is limited." It was also a rule that only clansmen with high-level martial supreme cultivation could learn this move. This was also Baiming Zai's first time using it. He immediately felt all the elemental energy in his body being sucked into his palm. He was on the verge of collapsing. He was overwhelmed with shock. He finally understood why his ancestor had set an iron order that only a high-level martial supreme could cultivate it. This move had an extremely high requirement on one's realm. Without a high-level martial supreme's cultivation base, even if one were to perform it, he was afraid that he would be drawn into it on the spot and unable to extricate himself. There seemed to be a ray of spiritual light gathering in the vortex in the sky. It was like a star was shining inside, lighting up the dark world. Boom, boom, boom. A dull sound came from under the sky. Amidst the swirling clouds of stars, Yunxiao's sea of thunder and hell of lightning began to gradually collapse, turning into earthworms and crawling away. Bang! The ball of thunder in Yunxiao's hand exploded, filling the sky with thunderbolts. He looked up in shock and saw the nebula pressing down. Pa! He immediately put his hands together and a golden light spread out. The true fiend Dharma idol behind him also closed its hands at the same time, and circles of black light circulated around its palms before suddenly blasting out in unison. A huge black light, like a meteor, struck into the nebula and created a huge storm. However, it could not stop the vortex from falling. Pa! The true fiend Dharma idol's 2 arms smacked directly onto the vortex, blocking that indescribable power of heaven and earth. What? The faces of the people from the Baiming family changed as they looked on in fear. The true fiend Dharma idol continued to collapse under the vortex of nebulas, and the demonic chi on its body became weaker and weaker. Even so, it still gave them a shock that they could not hide. This move was basically invincible among those of the same rank, and it was not something that a 2-star martial emperor's giant spirit divine ability could withstand. As the giant true devil was suppressed, Yunxiao's body suddenly tightened, as if he was bearing an infinite force and carrying a mountain on his back. He roared in anger, and rays of golden light burst out of his body, transforming into 3 heads and 6 arms. Each hand held a weapon, and one of his hands made a hand seal to guide the 11 northern heaven cold star swords. They took the shape of swords and pierced through the air. The sword ray cut into the nebula, but it was like a stone sinking into the sea, only causing a ripple. Yunxiao's face turned cold as he changed the incantation gesture in his hand. A sword talisman suddenly burst out in the air, growing larger and larger. 11 swords lined up in an array, and the terrifying sword chi grew stronger and stronger. Under the nebula vortex, the swords kept humming and trembling under the pressure. Your sister. Damn it. Yunxiao cursed angrily. The heavenly sword chart, which had gathered 11 swords, could not withstand the falling style and gradually collapsed. Gritting his teeth, he raised the sunset cloud mirror and shone the mirror light at the man. The starlight and the mirror light collided, causing a ripple to appear on the sunset cloud mirror, and it let out a buzzing sound. Yunxiao gritted his teeth and unleashed the sword force on the cold sword. Ancient manhwa characters flickered out one after another, and an extreme cold air surrounded the sword, causing ice flowers to bloom. In front of the people from Beiming Dark Palace, he didn't dare to use his sword techniques. However, with his unparalleled sword intent, any technique he used could pluck the stars and chase the moon. Green Lotus Sword Song, Swish. He raised his sword, and an ocean of ice spread out in the sky. The cold air was like fog and smoke. Although it was cold, it was refreshing and gave people a sense of calmness. The coldness of the frosty sword was even above the dark north chi. However, the former was purely cold, cold to the extreme beauty, while the latter was extremely cold with extreme een, so cold that it made people tremble in fear. Ice flowers bloomed in the sky, as if the ice spirits of the snow country were dancing. Yunxiao looked up into the sky and said, "100 flowers bloom." The ice flowers that filled the sky suddenly became sharp. The icy world of snow suddenly dissolved and condensed into an unparalleled ice sword essence. It rose into the sky and slashed into the nebula. Boom! The sea of starlight and clouds trembled, and the power of the vortex stopped. The entire sky collapsed. Boom! A strong blue light burst out of the nebula and split the vortex in half. Boom! Boom! Powerful explosions rang out one after another, as if a world had been destroyed. The entire sky was split into two, and the powerful impact spread out in all directions. Boom! Both Yunxiao and Beimingze were swept up by the aftershock and pulled into the crack in the sky. Even the 9th grade battleship floating in the sky was affected by the impact. It rippled in the sky and was pushed back by the waves of power. Beimingze was completely stunned when he saw the crack in the sky. He only came to his senses when he was sucked into the crack. He hurriedly used his essence force to protect his body and tried to break the world with a punch, trying to rush out. Boom! However, his punch seemed to have hit an iron plate, and it was all jolted back. The sound of bones cracking came from one of his arms, and a part of it was actually shattered. What? Beimingze suddenly gasped. To his horror, he found that beams of golden light were gradually emerging in front of the fist beam, and Yunxiao's shadow was slowly condensing. The two of them stood in the dark crack, facing each other coldly. Beimingze was shocked and said angrily, "Hurry up and get out of the way. If the crack closes, you and I will both be finished." A cold look flashed across Yunxiao's face as he said sarcastically, "It's just a crack in the sky, why would Beiming family be afraid of it? You know nothing." Beimingze roared. "If the sky closes and we can't find the correct coordinates, we might be lost in the void forever, never to return." "In that case," Yunxiao said lazily, "I'll have to hurry up and kill you." "Ha! Impudent. You're actually afraid?" Beimingze roared in anger, finding it extremely comical. Even though it was impossible to break his "my life is over," he never thought that his opponent would have the courage to kill him. He never had such a thought. But as soon as he spoke, he immediately stopped. The cold sword once again exploded with cold air, turning into balls of blue light in the dark cracks. Boundless sword intent rippled out from the sword, even more than the previous sword. Beimingze's heart trembled and he said in fear, You actually held back in that sword attack just now." This time, not only was his mind in a daze, but an inexplicable fear also spread in his heart. Although the power on the sword was not as strong as before, the strength of the sword intent was something he had never seen in his life. "You're so silly." Beimingze was so shocked that he barely managed to spit out a word before he saw a pair of eyes as red as the moon, which were extremely demonic and bright. After that, he felt a pain in his spiritual ocean and was momentarily dazed. He was stunned to see the appearance of the person in front of him change. The delicate and tender face turned into a handsome face with sharp edges. He seemed to have met him before. Arg. You are. Bai Mingzhe instantly recognized the face, and an explosive pain exploded in his head. He clutched his head with both hands and wailed. But what made him tremble even more was the man's face, which he would never forget once he saw it. His courage and confidence suddenly collapsed at this moment. He no longer had the will to fight, and only wanted to escape from this place. His body trembled like a sieve. He held his head and looked around, only to see a pair of huge blood-red eyes hanging high in the dark night, looking at him coldly. It's him, it's really him. Bai Mingzhe roared with all his might, but no one could hear him. The great fear had crushed his confidence and will, and finally his martial intent. The frightened face suddenly turned dull, and then he laughed foolishly. He laughed louder and said, It's him, it's actually him, he's actually not dead yet. The blood moon in the darkness gradually closed. There was a hint of disdain on Yunxiao's face. Just the image of his former face in the other party's mind had scared him silly. If he had known this, he would not have had to fight so hard. He raised his sword and slashed down. A blue sword light cut the crazed Baiming swamp in half. Outside the crack, everyone was looking at it in horror, holding their breath. Suddenly, a sword ray shot out from the crack. It was not very strong, but it cut a new hole in the sky. After that, Yunxiao's figure slowly emerged. He took a step forward and appeared in front of everyone. What was going on? Why is he the one who came out? Everyone was extremely shocked. The people around Baiming Lifeng were so scared that they kept retreating. A bad feeling was spreading in their hearts. Although it was hard to believe that Yunxiao had defeated Bai Mingzhe, the scene in front of them was an ironclad fact. They were all nervously looking at the crack, waiting for the other person to come out. However, the sky that was slowly gathering was constantly breaking their mental defenses. In the end, the crack in the sky closed on its own, and the figure that they had been waiting for did not appear. A chill spread in everyone's heart. Even Liao Yangbing and the others couldn't believe it. The truth kept hitting their eyes and minds. A high-level martial supreme had fallen just like that. From his awe-inspiring appearance to his disappearance in the end, every single process had been witnessed clearly. However, it was hard to believe. Yunxiao raised his eyes and looked at Baiming Lifeng as he said coldly, "Young Master Wind, it's your turn to die." Shock. Baiming Lifeng could not help but shiver, and it was only then that he realized that no one was around him, and that they had all retreated hundreds of meters away. He could not help but step back as well, as if he could not face the pressure from Yunxiao. Yunxiao gave him a look and felt disinterested. Then, he looked up at the 9th grade warship and said, "Since they've used such a huge object, it can't be just a mere 7 stars martial emperor, right?" Cold sweat broke out on everyone's foreheads. What a trash of a 7 stars martial emperor. The battleship was still hovering in the sky without any reaction. Suddenly, the array on the ship shone with a bright light, and an attack was slowly condensing, its target being Yunxiao. A spatial binding force came from the ship, imprisoning the sky within 1,000 meters. Everyone felt as if their bodies had sunk into a paste, and their movements became abnormally slow. Their movements became slower and slower, making it difficult for them to escape. Baiming Lifeng's face was filled with surprise, but at the same time, he was also very confused. There shouldn't be any other experts on this 9th rank warship besides Bai Mingzhe, so who was commanding the warship? A thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Could it be that the clan had sent another expert to follow him? When he thought of this, he was both surprised and delighted. He was happy that he no longer had to fear Yunxiao, but surprised that he was so incompetent in the eyes of the experts in his family. He wondered what effect it would have on him if the news was spread back. Yunxiao's face flickered. This kind of spatial binding technique was even more difficult to deal with than the one that could directly suppress the space and lock it into an iron bucket. As the saying went, the strongest is easily broken, and only the most gentle can last. He raised his hand, and the Divine Realm tablet flew out slowly. It directly turned into a ray of light and broke through the sky, flying 10,000 meters into the air. It kept spinning in a spiral, getting bigger and bigger, and then pressed down on the 9th rank warship. What kind of profound level weapon is that? It can break free from the space bind of the battleship? Baiming Lifeng was taken aback. He was well aware of how powerful this spatial restraint was. Even a high-level martial supreme would find it difficult to break free from it. Even if he used an extremely sharp profound level weapon to cut open a crack, it would be able to close up in an instant. It was a binding technique that was almost impossible to break. However, the power of the world on the Divine Realm tablet directly devoured all kinds of forces and was invincible. The space constraint was also easily broken by the power of the world. The size of the Divine Realm tablet grew larger and larger, and it fell faster and faster. Boom. The white light finally hit the defense of the battleship and kept devouring the defensive power. Moreover, the Divine Realm tablet was still growing bigger, as if it was not convinced by the size of the battleship. Baiming Lifeng's heart skipped a beat, and he was dumbstruck by what he saw. He could only watch helplessly as the starship's defenses were broken and the steel fell. At that moment, the 9th grade battleship began to turn illusory and gradually left this world. It had activated space jump in an attempt to avoid the bombardment of the Divine Realm tablet. Boom boom boom. Just as the 9th grade battleship became illusionary, the Divine Realm tablet finally fell. It didn't pass through the body of the battleship and fall to the ground as everyone had expected. Instead, it hit the battleship firmly, causing a shocking explosion. The entire 9th grade battleship trembled violently in the sky. The illusionary body of the battleship solidified again and kept performing space jumps, trying to get rid of the Divine Realm tablet that was pressing on it. However, it was to no avail. Like a cicada caught by a mantis, it could not break free no matter what. How could this be? Everyone was a little stunned. Although it was the first time for many people to see a 9th grade battleship, they had heard too many rumors about this ultimate battleship. Not only were its attacks extremely powerful, but its defenses were also astonishing. But now it seemed that it was easily suppressed by a profound level weapon and could not escape. It seemed to be far from the rumors. Stop. Suddenly, a loud roar came from the battleship, and then a beam of light rushed out. A strong force gathered in front of the tablet and turned into a huge palm, which hit the tablet. Boom. 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 Waves of energy shook the sky, and the entire sky was filled with ripples. Everyone felt dizzy, and their internal organs felt extremely uncomfortable. When Baiming Lifeng saw who it was, he was shocked and cried out, "Elder Kongtian." That figure was actually Baiming Kongtian, the elder who had brought him to the Red Moon City to participate in the joust for a spouse festival. Baiming Lifeng had an indescribable feeling in his heart. The 9th grade battleship was extremely huge, and there was too much space inside. He didn't even know who was hiding inside. If everything went smoothly for him, Baiming Kongtian probably wouldn't have appeared at all. At this moment, Baiming Kongtian was also extremely depressed. Before, he didn't take the Divine Realm tablet seriously at all. He thought that it was just a gravity-profound weapon, which was not worth mentioning in front of a 9th grade warship. However, after he landed, he realized that he had made a huge mistake. Not only was space jump completely ineffective against this thing, but even with the strength of the battleship, it was gradually unable to hold on. If the gravity of this thing continued to increase, the entire battleship would either be crushed into two or crash. That would be the biggest joke. Since the birth of the 9th grade battleship, no one had ever heard of it being crushed by a profound level weapon. If this happened to the Baiming family, not only would they become the laughingstock of the world, but as Baiming Lifeng's secret spy, he would also be unable to escape the blame. Therefore, at the first moment he found something wrong, he rushed out directly and attacked the Divine Realm tablet madly. To his horror, the profound level weapon was not damaged at all under his stormy attack. He was a peak 8-star martial emperor expert, only one step away from the peak of martial Dao, the 9-star realm. Yunxiao was also shocked, and his pupils constricted. The moment Baiming Kongtian appeared, he knew something was wrong. The Divine Realm tablet was connected to his mind, so it couldn't withstand the storm of attacks at all. He hurriedly made hand seals with one hand, and with a thought, the Divine Realm tablet immediately flew up and quickly turned into a meteor that flew back into his body. Yunxiao's face turned pale. He hurriedly adjusted his breathing and stayed alert. With the departure of the Divine Realm tablet, the battleship finally stopped shaking and continued to hang quietly above. However, the figures on it flickered and flew here and there, as if they were beginning to repair the damage. Baiming Kongtian flew down from the warship and appeared directly in front of Yunxiao, staring at him with cold eyes. Yunxiao's heart sank, and he could not help but take a few steps back to keep a safe distance from the man. Killing Baiming Zhe had already greatly damaged his vital qi, so it was impossible for him to fight with Baiming Kongtian again. At this moment, he was in the hands of a peak 8 stars martial emperor, and it was a problem whether he could escape. Behind him, Liao Yangbing and the others were all very nervous, especially Liao Yangbing, who secretly regretted that he had placed the wrong bet. With such an expert here, there was no way Yunxiao could make a comeback today. You're already a 2-star martial sovereign. Baiming Kongtian stared at him for a long time before he finally spoke. Not at all, Yunxiao said humbly. Compared to Elder Kongtian, who is at the peak of 8 stars, there is still a gap. Humph. Baiming Kongtian snorted heavily. Yunxiao's words did not feel good in his ears. He said coldly, "Are you mocking me?" Yunxiao pretended to be horrified and said in a hurry, "How dare you? Elder Kongtian is someone who stands at the peak of the continent. If I were to mock you, wouldn't I be courting death?" Baiming Kongtian snorted again and said coldly, "You've killed the people of my Baiming Dark Palace. Do you still want to live?" "I'd be dead if you didn't," Yunxiao said with a faint smile. "I'd be dead now." He also felt a burst of strangeness in his heart. Why was Baiming Kongtian so good-tempered and long-winded with him? Killing intent burst out from Baiming Kongtian's eyes as he said in a cold voice, "I don't care how glib your tongue is, but you've killed Baiming Zhe. It'll be hard for you to live now." "Very difficult?" Yunxiao asked in surprise. "Then how can I survive?" His mind raced, and all kinds of speculations appeared in his mind. Baiming Kongtian snorted for the 3rd time. His lips moved slightly, and he actually used secret sound transmission. All the warriors were greatly disappointed. They were all nervously watching the two people's conversation. They couldn't hear it all of a sudden, and their hearts were very stifled. Baiming Lifeng also furrowed his brows, not understanding what Baiming Kongtian meant. Yunxiao had killed Baiming Zhe and damaged the 9th-tier warship, which was an absolute crime punishable by death. How could he live? Besides, with Yunxiao's talent, he could be sentenced to death 10,000 times. Such a monstrous man could not be left in this world. After hearing the voice transmission, Yunxiao's face changed drastically, and his pupils constricted. Baiming Kongtian has actually discovered my indestructible golden body. When Baiming Kongtian saw Yunxiao's look, he was also shocked, but he could not hide his surprise and excitement. He was not sure when he saw Yunxiao's transcendence golden body in the battle. After all, it was very different from Ao Chongkong's. So, he immediately got the answer from Yunxiao's expression after a little test. He swallowed his saliva. If he could obtain the imperishable golden body from this kid, the credit he would get would be unimaginable. Yunxiao also realized that he had lost his composure, and he felt vexed. The look on Baiming Kongtian's face also showed that the other party had completely perceived his state of mind. He sighed inwardly and knew that he could no longer hide it, so he could only send a voice transmission. "I'm not too sure about the origin of this body refining technique either, but it's an absolute art after all. It's not too good to hand it over to Lord Kongtian just like that, right? Your life and death are in my hands now," said Baiming Kongtian coldly. "What qualifications do you have to negotiate with me? At most, I'll beat you half to death and directly search your soul." "Soul search?" Yunxiao laughed. "I'm a 9th-tier great alchemist, are you sure you want to search my soul?" Baiming Kongtian's face turned pale. It was too dangerous to search the soul of a 9th-tier alchemist, and he was afraid that the other party would erase his memory directly, which would be troublesome. Killing Yunxiao was a big deal, but obtaining the tyrant body tempering technique was even more important. Young Master Yun, he finally said in an amiable tone, I also admire that you're a one-in-million genius. I really don't want to kill you just like that.